take your jacket off. We might be here for a while.
Yeah.
Never know. You ready, Wendy? Yeah. All right, we're going to call our meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. on Monday, February 11th, 2019. This is the Town of Greenville Town Board meeting. And we'll first go through our roll call. Mike Woods, here. Andy Peters, here. Dean Culbertson, here. Jack Anderson's here, and Mark Strobel is excused. Please stand and face the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, there's no public hearings or presentations on the agenda, so the public comment form, I've got one person signed in, Shannon, looks like Lowenhagen. Shannon's here. So if you want to speak, it looks about plowing. I just need you to come up to the microphone for purposes of having it recorded for the general public. Name, excuse me, your name and address before you go on to your topic, and you've got a couple of minutes if you'd like.
Shannon Lowenhagen, N2299 Cornhouse Drive.
Okay, and just for reference, that's up in the Glen Valley subdivision.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
We moved there a year and a half ago, and we had dealt with this last year and this year. The side roads up there hardly ever get plowed. I guess that's your policy, 3 inches or more. It's been glare ice up there for several weeks. I've made phone calls. My kid has fallen going to the bus 3 times. I've almost fallen shoveling out our fire hydrant and going to the mailbox. I get told that's our policy, not to plow it unless 3 inches or more, no salt. So where I work, we plow most of the county or most town roads in the whole county, and there is no other town in this county that picks and chooses what road they plow. If they go out, they plow every road, and they don't leave certain people out in the dust to deal with whatever conditions they're dealt with. Like our road gets windroad shut every time the plow goes through, and it gets left. I'm sure all the other ones do too. Lots of people complain up there. I sent out a message hoping people would come down here, but they didn't. Last week the bus took off, went completely sideways in the road, almost took out the mailboxes. I mean, I don't know at what point it's going to get taken care of or the policy is going to get changed. Because it's kind of, I think, ridiculous.
Okay.
And right now, today it warmed up a little bit. Now we got 4 inches of complete slop that your car can't hardly go through.
We got additional snow coming this evening too, so
Right.
I hope that would exceed your 3 inches and things would get cleaned up. Our policy is based on state statutes on what we're required to do. So that's what we've based our policy on. Brian is our Public Works Director, so he can fill you in more if you'd like to.
I've spoke directly with Shannon a few times on the phone before. He's brought other concerns to me to see their validity, just to see if I have any true concerns about safety. Of the times that I've checked into it, a lot of times they have not had merit. So.
Okay. So the recent weather that we've had, I think a lot of roads have had a lot of ice on them, not just your road or my road, which there's probably several around town. It's just the conditions have to get to a certain temperature before salt or the brine fluids will do anything. So looking at our policy is something that we tend to do from reoccurring over time. Make sure that there's not any updates that need to happen there. So this plowing policy will be reviewed.
Yeah. Your policy is different than every other town in the county is what I'm trying to say.
Who do you work for?
Outagamie.
Outagamie County, and you plow snow for them? Okay. Well, appreciate your comments.
Outagamie County does have bare pavement policies for a lot of the state highways, high speed, high traffic.
Yep.
Quite a difference in between different designations of roadways, as we're well aware, primary, secondary, residential routes.
Right, we do all the town roads too. So,
Yep.
I mean, I'm well aware of what goes on.
Appreciate your comments, and we can look into your road in particular just to make sure that it's not
I'm not
things
just
that are
asking.
unsafe.
I'm not asking for special treatment. I mean,
You're looking for a policy to be reviewed?
yeah. I'm not saying salt. I'm not saying bare road. I'm saying just plow it, and it'll prevent all this ice buildup. I mean, Glen Valley, Holy Hill, I'm like Highway 15 at all times. No reason for that either.
Okay.
If none of the other ones get attention.
Appreciate your comments.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Frank, you guys go in there, you know, I know you've been every day, it seems like you're plowing snow. When you get caught up, you go do those side roads? I think we used to do that when they got caught up.
I mean, currently, the way it sits, I mean, we generally wait until there is that 3 inches of snow built up before we do go through and do them. On average right now, each cut edge, I mean, on a plow, if you're about 2 snow events at each cut edge, I mean, right there, you're looking at about $600 a truck. So I mean, can we go around and push them all clean? By all means, we can. It's just, I'm being conscientious of what we budgeted for cut edges, salt, stuff like that. And I do have concerns. I mean, we're middle of February, and I mean, we got essentially 200 tons of salt already burned through about 400 tons. 350 to 400 tons is what we burned through, with about 200 left in the budget. So just trying to be conscientious of where we sit. You know, I don't want to be coming back to you guys saying, hey, you know, what I did is I looked back historically over the past 6 years, what we've used for salt, and budgeted that very similar dollar amount. Or quantity, I should say, not dollar amount, quantity more than anything.
Another thing to touch on with that too is, I think in the past, and we do that now, let's say we get a 2-inch event. We don't hit the local roads, but then 2 days later we get a 3-inch event. Now we have 5 inches of snow on the road. Based on the conditions that are present that day and the next 2 or 3 days going forward will determine whether or not or how we respond to that. Today is a good example. We've had some snowfall that went through over the weekend, 2 to 3 inches in this general area. Then we had some compacted snow that began to thaw a little bit on the roads because of the warming temperatures. So we had a choice that had to be made today whether or not we were going to go out and clear every local road. And by doing that, that would have taken our primary routes offline and have gotten those cleaned and prepped for tonight's snowfall. And then our guys would have been out plowing the roads for another 8 to 12 hours today to go home and then to come back at 4 o'clock this morning and start again. So conscious decisions are being made every day based on current conditions and then what we anticipate to see in the forecast over the next 24 to 48 hours to determine what's the most cost-effective, reasonable response based on what we're seeing on the road.
We did have a lot of salt. I mean, as you guys are aware, if you drive around now, the salt's finally starting to work. Today is the first day, you know, where it's finally getting around to you're seeing that dark, you know, asphalt and stuff like that. So there is a lot of slush buildup. I did drive around right around 2:30 to see what it looked like if we should go out and do a full plow. And at that point in time, made the decision that, well, let's wait. The guys are coming in at 4 a.m. tomorrow, and we'll be scraping everything then. Instead of keeping them up until 8 o'clock tonight, burning through cut edges, stuff like that, you know, let's just go through, get everything all brushed up after this next snow event.
Okay. Well, it sounds like and I wish Mr. Lowenhagen would have stuck around to hear all this. It sounds like what we're doing is trying to be smart about how we're using our tax dollars that our citizens pay to the town for the service of snow plowing. We obviously have only so much salt that we've budgeted for. We can get more, but we'll have to cut other things out of the budget in order to do it. So I look for you guys to keep doing the smart things as far as our tax dollars, and it sounds like that's where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anybody else here wishing to speak during public comment forum? Not seeing anybody signal, so I just ask that we close public comment forum with my motion. Needs a second.
Second that.
Andy's given a second. All in favor to close public comment forum, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Public comment forum section is closed. That takes us to our consent agenda that has our meeting minutes from January, the town vouchers for February 2019, staff reports, committee reports, operator licenses. Also has a request for change of agent. Looking for authorization to recruit and hire a Parks and Forestry laborer position, and also looking for approval for Resolution 15-19. This is requesting the Outagamie County Board to lower speed limits on portions of County Highway CA NGV to 45 miles per hour. Any questions on these or a motion?
I'll make that motion on the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Dean's made a motion. Andy's given a second. Questions or comments? Not hearing any, so let's go forward with our vote. All in favor to approve the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Takes us into item 7, the Planning Commission recommendations and development projects. So 7A is our resolution 0919, amending our developer agreements for Jenner John Field of Dreams. So when was the last time that we went through this? Do you know, Michael, what meeting that was? Was that last month?
14th was the original date for the approvals of the original 3 agreements. There are 2 agreements before this evening to be amended with regards to the developer, Mr. Winkle. The reason for the amendments is that he was actually able to get cost estimates and bids for the bird wire that's required in the stormwater pond. And as part of the agreement, we would pay out their share of that portion, like we are sharing the cost due to the original pond as being constructed. Additionally, there were some additional engineering fee services that he's requesting be paid for. So that is in the agreement this evening. And actually just this evening, about 4 o'clock, I had a meeting with Mr. Winkle. There were some additional fees that he wanted, engineering service fees that he wanted included in the agreement that weren't given to us until, I didn't receive this information until last week. So the current agreement sits at additional engineering service fees of $10,391, which is what the current agreement calls for. He's asking for an additional $4,296 to be included, which would bring that total to $14,687 for the engineering fees.
What are the engineering fees from?
The information that I received this evening were actually from the original design of the pond back in 2016. Mr. Winkle was not involved at that time. It was the Jenner Johns, who are the current property owners, that were developing it at that point in time. But he has requested that those costs be included as part of the agreement as well, presumably because that would be built into the purchase price, and so he would like to have his fair share as he feels paid for by the town for those design services.
Okay, and the 10,000, where does that come from? You said it's engineering fees? When did those occur?
Those occurred this year with Mr. Winkle's, part of Mr. Winkle's development application.
Okay. So this keeps coming up, and I'd like to really not have this go through over and over again. So Joel, do you have some wording that we could put into this to make this be our final agreement, unless there's a significant change order due to construction that wasn't expected?
Sure, I think there's a couple actions that you can take. So the town board has already acted to approve 2 prior resolutions that would have adopted or approved anyway the execution of those development agreements between the Jenner Johns and Winkle and his LLC. The total value for the town's contribution for those already approved agreements totals $206,356. In your packet this evening, excluding the item that Michael had just brought forward regarding those additional engineering fees, the developer is requesting the town contribute $227,252 in difference. So essentially, if the town board finds it agreeable to support the request of the developer, that would be the portion that the town would agree to pay based on the resolutions that are in your packet. So you have couple choices tonight. One, you have already approved development agreements on the meeting of January 14th, so theoretically no further action would be required. If you feel that it would be appropriate for the town to contribute those additional costs, which would basically include the increased cost of the bird wiring and a slight increase on the engineering fees that were not recorded in the prior development agreement, that total would be that $227,252. However, from a staff perspective, we would certainly recommend that whichever approach you take, that would be the best and final offer that the town would agree to. So your motion would be to approve the resolution tonight if that's your desire. And part of that motion would be that this would be the final offer that the town would consider as part of the development agreement. Any future changes to it need to be in accordance with how the development agreement is written, and that those change orders need to be presented in accordance to the agreement, not to try to provide or present amended agreements every other week or every month. This is the final offer, this is the final approved agreement, and that's it as it stands.
Michael, you said there's $10,000 for engineering. That's current and from the current year,
Correct.
and there's additional 4,000 from previous, approximate.
Last question.
Go ahead, team.
Those last two figures you just mentioned, those are not in our packet? Those figures are there?
No, they are in your packet. So the two,
10,700, that's when we say 10,000?
yeah. So if you're in your packet, just to kind of point you in the right direction. So under that particular agenda item, you'll find the copy of the development agreements. The development agreement for Winkle's development. Essentially, there are three paragraphs under subparagraph. There are three subparagraphs under paragraph 10 as it relates to the regional stormwater pond. Subparagraph A identifies that the town's portion of the cost to construct the pond at $154,150. Subparagraph B is the cost associated essentially with the cost to construct the pond at $62,711. That's the cost to provide the bird wire, correct, Michael?
No, that's the extra upsizing pipe cost.
Oh, excuse me, that's the storm sewer upsizing cost. You're correct. And then subparagraph C, the $10,391, that is the engineering fees to date prior to tonight's meeting. It does not include the engineering costs that were presented to staff at 4 p.m. this afternoon. Within that packet, you'll find an exhibit that outlines those costs in a kind of a tabular form, a table form, so you can see how those break down. But those three subparagraphs identify what would effectively be that total cost of the town at $227,252.
Another question.
Go ahead, team.
How do we verify that these are legit numbers?
So I actually have the copies of the invoice, I don't have them with me, all of them, but I have copies of the invoices, that are associated with the cost in paragraph 10C, that 10,391. So I have copies of those. Those came from McMahon, who did much of the design work, for Mr. Winkle this year. And then there's also some, Dable engineering costs in there as well, which I have invoices for. The 2016 cost was not an actual invoice. It was just a letter. I have that here, from Dable Engineering, providing a cost estimate for the work that was done back in 2016. So it's a cost estimate. I don't have hard invoices that prove what it actually was, but that is what I was presented from Mr. Winkle and Dable Engineering. So those costs are not associated, that are associated with that are not in the agreement this evening. So the 10,391 that's in the agreement is everything but the cost estimates that I received from 2016.
Okay, so
Dean, the question on the two larger numbers, those are estimate of probable costs presented to us by McMahon, the engineer for this particular project.
let's see some of the other subparagraphs under 10. They talk about the engineering fees not to exceed a certain dollar value, $10,391. Item D gives approval for our Public Works Director to approve change order requests less than $5,000. And E is just about acceptance of the pond, and receipt of itemized invoices need to be submitted within 15 days. Correct?
Correct. So subparagraph D effectively models our existing purchasing policy for the town. Essentially, the
That's
Public
great.
Works Director, if there's a change order that's being requested, and we feel that that change order is frivolous in nature, wasn't justified. We would certainly deny that. In the event that it's denied administratively, they can certainly petition the board to request that change order, but then any value over $5,000 would be required to be approved by the town board. And those change orders are based on the constructability of the pond, not on whether or not the developer has another fee for engineering. It's
Correct.
because the pond liner wasn't appropriate, so additional fill material had to be brought in or something to that effect.
So, Michael, just one final question. I just want to make sure that the engineering fees that you talked about of just over $10,000 and the previous year, correct? And also the $4,000 from 2016, those are not in this resolution.
The $4,000 amount is not in the agreement, so.
How about the $10,000?
The 10,391 is in.
That's the one that's in here.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you felt so inclined to approve the request for the fees we paid from the 2016 work, that number would change to 14,687.
So I know our clerk does not appreciate this too much, but ultimately, I think to clean it up, maybe you could have maybe up to 3 individual motions related to the resolutions. So, and let me clarify that. So one motion would be to either include the additional $4,296 under subparagraph C. If that motion passes, then that would be included in the draft development agreement. From there, you would make a motion to approve the resolution as it's been amended, okay? If that were to be approved, then our recommendation from a staff perspective is that a motion be made that this is the best and final offer that the town will consider for this development until such time that the development agreement is executed and signed by both parties. We will no longer entertain any additional amendments to the agreement.
Any other questions? Or is there a motion?
Just got one on the financial guarantee. That irrevocable letter of credit or escrow. Which one are we gonna require?
Whatever they prefer.
Well, isn't there quite a bit of difference?
Well, the escrow would be cash,
Right.
so they're probably not gonna do that. They still have to put up some collateral at the bank to get a letter of credit. So a letter of credit, cash is obviously easier for us. Letter of credit, though, actually too, is fairly easy as long as we comply with the requirements of the letter of credit. The problem, I know, there's always the concern with the Crestview project. What happened there is the letter of credit actually expired, and that's why the town wasn't able to follow through on that. But right now, we have a tracking system where we track all these letter of credits. We recently had to extend a couple of them because they were about to expire, and we actually had to threaten the developer with calling that letter of credit. They don't want those called because that's basically saying the bank's got to pay us cash, and then that really hurts the developer's credit rating, essentially. It's like defaulting on a loan. So they don't want to do that.
Any other questions or a motion? I'll be looking, I'll make a motion on this, that we approve resolution 09-19. Would this be our best and final offer until everything is executed within this document and signed by both parties? No other offers will be reviewed until that's done. Anything I'm missing on that motion?
Okay, one last question. What about the 4296, you're not going to do that?
Absolutely not.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
Motion's been given, seconded. Any other questions or comments? There's no other questions or comments. Let's go forward to the vote on this. This is to approve resolution 09-19 as our best and final offer. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 7A is approved. 7B. This is resolution 10-19, also amending the developer agreements for Jenner John Field of Dreams. Can you give me a little summary what's in this one?
Sure, this
versus
one
the other?
is essentially modifying the letter of credit amount. Due to the increase in the bird wire cost, it increased the total project cost, so it's just cleaning up the letter of credit that the developer has to submit. So in a sense, the letter of credit is increasing for the developer this way.
Okay, and I see this as no financial obligations from the town?
Correct, there's no financial obligations on this agreement.
Okay,
And
Oh.
just as a clarification too, that these two agreements, 09, the one under resolution 0919 and 10-19, they are interrelated. Jenner Johns own the property in which Winkles is seeking to develop. In order to effectively develop one piece of property, the town needs to enter in an agreement with the other party to develop their portion of the project, so that no one portion of the project, if you will, is left undeveloped after a certain period of time. So in order to make their closing work, we have to enter into an agreement with both parties and then require them for the completion of their development within the time frame that's established in both agreements.
okay. Any questions on that, or is there a motion?
Make a motion for approval of resolution 10-19.
Second.
Andy's made the motion, Mike the second, to approve resolution 1019. Questions or comments? Since there's none, let's go forward with our vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 7B is approved. Item 9, because there's nothing for 8. Item 9A, operator's license application for Trinity Hoffman. Get to it.
Her operator's license was recommended for denial. Per our policy, any alcohol or drug convictions within the last 12 months requires you to bring the application before the board. She does have a conviction on October 1st of 2018 with possession of marijuana, and another one with open intoxicants in her vehicle.
2 different dates.
So they're 2 different filing dates.
When did you say those dates were?
October 1st of 2018.
Okay.
And October 8th.
Questions or a motion?
I'll move to deny.
I'll second. Any other questions or comments? Since there's none, let's go forward with our vote on 9A. This is to deny the operator's license application for Trinity Hoffman. All in favor to deny, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 9A is denied. 9B, alleged claim for excessive assessment for Jared Van Lannen. So this was presented to us previously. Is there changes, I assume, that it's come back to us?
Yeah, I spoke with Rich and Ashley and I said to bring it back. I think the difference is that there were specific dollar amounts included in this, where previously the claim that Jared had submitted did not include specific dollar amounts
Okay.
for the loss. Okay?
Jared, you can have a seat until you're called if you're needed. Is there any questions or comments? So I think this is just going through the process it needs to. And I think Mr.
Yes, I believe, with the last meeting, I did not explain that I did not receive a notice of reassessment. And so this is specifically addressing that issue.
Okay. Is there any questions or comments or a motion on this?
Just a question on the notice. Can anybody elaborate on that?
So in talking with our assessor, obviously we did a full revaluation of the entire town. The vast majority of properties in the town received an increase in their assessed value by greater than 5%. which would have necessitated the need for notices to be sent. Statutes only require the notices to be sent out by regular mail, just within the time frame that is required under statute. To our knowledge and our understanding, the assessor did send out notices to all the property owners that exceeded that 5%. As you know, the vast majority of people did receive that notice. Whether that notice was received, that isn't really up to us per se, but we do understand that the assessor, in accordance to statute, did send out notices to all properties that had an increased assessed value greater than that percent threshold required by statute.
So after the reevaluation letters are sent out, there was an open book before Board of Review.
Correct.
Okay. Jared, you showed up at Board of Review? And we heard your case, correct?
I showed up for the Board of Review on another property. I was at the Board of Review, and the Board of Review closed. After the Board of Review closed is when I was given notice from Ryan
Okay.
that my Klein Store property had increased as well.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion? I'll make the motion for resolution, it looks like 13-19. And this resolution is to disallow the alleged claim of excessive assessment and refund of 2018 property taxes.
I'll second your motion.
Any other questions or comments? Not hearing any. Let's go forward with our vote. All in favor of the resolution to disallow the alleged claim should state so by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Resolution, 13-19 is approved, and that is to disallow the alleged claim. 9C is an alleged claim for excessive assessment of Corey and Samantha, is it Conan? Is that correct? Are they present? Okay, they're not. So I've read through the documentation on this. My own property that I own in town actually went up greater than theirs. I think that they're complaining that theirs went up 30% and the average was 18%. And there were some other issues that they had with their home that they think has devalued the home. That's something that will have to be decided later on by some other party. So I'll make the motion for resolution 14-19 to disallow the alleged claim of excessive assessment and refund of 2018 property taxes. Any other questions or comments? Let's go forward with our vote on 9C. This is for resolution 14-19, disallow the alleged claim of excessive assessment and refund of 2018 property taxes. All in favor of this, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Resolution 14-19 is passed. 9D, purchase of a single axle dump truck. So there's quite a bit of paperwork that you did on this. I think it's basically the second half of our 100+ pages, almost 200 pages. So it looks like you've got plenty of quotes, bids on this. This was part of our budget and actually is less than the budgeted amount by some thousands of dollars. Yeah. And this will be replacing a current vehicle?
Two vehicles that are currently.
Okay.
What do we do with the vehicles? Trade them in or sell them outright?
I will probably put them up for auction, online auction like we did with the last plow truck. We had very good success with that because you get bidders from pretty much all over. They see government surplus and they generally know that those vehicles have been maintained just because they see the regular maintenance that they should, opposed to other vehicles that are out on the market.
In previous years, we've also put them outside the road,
Mm-hmm.
and we've had luck with that from some of the contractors, so maybe you want to do both?
Could
How about
potentially, yep.
Questions or a motion?
I'll make that motion to go ahead and accept the bid on this vehicle, single axle truck, or proposal, I should say. Quality truck, to accept that proposal.
Okay, is that, Dean, is that the quality truck proposal for $220,588?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you for clarification. I'll second. Any questions or comments? All right, let's go forward with our vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the purchase of a single axle dump truck from Quality Truck for $220,588, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 9D is approved. 9E, landscaping requirements for the town of Greenville, zoning code 320-62.
Well, as you're scrolling to the fifth to last page in your 200-page packet, basically you have what is the current proposed landscaping plan for the fire and safety building. We wanted to bring this before you just to give you kind of an idea of the impact of our current code as it relates to commercial industrial development, especially one that abuts residential properties. I think you'll hear and see in future commercial development projects that our landscaping requirements are quite extensive, and I think that's kind of self-evident when you look at the overall landscape plan for the proposed fire and safety building. Some of the requirements of our plan include not only large ornamental or large deciduous shade trees, but an extreme amount of shrubbery, if you will, along the lot lines, and you can see that on both, basically all the lot lines for that matter. Obviously, we also have some buffer requirements as it relates to lands, commercially or industrially zoned properties adjacent to residential use, which would be the west side of that property. You can see quite an extensive planting of conifer evergreen shrubs. And as I mentioned, we've kind of heard complaints from individuals looking to develop these types of projects in the town before, and how quite onerous the requirements of landscaping are. And so from a staff perspective, we basically put together a very rough draft, if you will, of what we would suggest kind of be a foundation, if you will, if we are going to make changes to that overall landscaping plan. It still requires an individual to plant a substantial amount of large shade trees throughout the property, along the property line, but in a manner that these larger trees can survive and thrive. Under our current conditions, these large trees that could have spreads of up to 60 feet need to be planted at 40 feet intervals, which basically is going to create conflicts over the long term. Maybe it looks great in the first 5 or 10 years, but at years 10, 15, 20, and beyond, these trees become overgrown, and it becomes problematic to not only maintain, but to maintain a healthy species. In addition to that, the shrubbery planting requirement, again, just shrubs planted on top of other shrubs. So as they continue to grow and mature, they're going to crowd each other out. You might have a few that die off over time, and as you go and replace that shrub or maintain it, now you have this huge gaping hole, and you have the other shrubbery that obviously looks misshapen and just not as ornamental as what you had intended when you originally planted it. So the proposed draft basically would categorize things into lot line plantings, and that primarily relates to large shade trees as well as street trees that would be required should the property abut right-of-way. It also takes into account foundation plantings. Our current code does not take into account the areas in and near buildings or structures. We think it would be appropriate to identify that certain landscaping is required around the perimeter of buildings. And then it just somewhat further defines and somewhat provides for an opportunity for conifers and other buffering landscapes to thrive and not basically be planted on one another. So we added some cleaner language as it relates to landscape berms, the use of certain conifers and trees to provide that aesthetic screening, if you will, between properties, so that you won't have the situation of noise and pollution and things like that, but also so you don't have a situation where your landscaping is dying off because it doesn't have the room to grow and thrive. Effectively, if you were to look at the proposed landscape plan for the fire and safety building, ultimately, you're really going to be cutting a lot of those plantings by about a third to one half to 2/3. So you have, for example, at least 90 conifer trees planted along the west lot line. Effectively, the ordinance, the drafted ordinance would allow for between 30 and 50 conifer trees. Still provide plenty of area to screen the adjacent residential properties, but give adequate space between, let's say, 2 Colorado blue spruce trees to grow and thrive. Right now, they're at 10 or 15 foot center intervals. Those trees have a 30 to 40 foot spread. So they're just, again, the first 5 years, things are going to look great. But once those trees begin to mature, they're just going to conflict with each other and create problems. So essentially what we would like to do tonight is propose to you the opportunity to craft an amendment in our ordinance to repeal that section. You wouldn't be approving that ordinance tonight. It was just, I want to get feedback from the board before we go ahead and spend the time and effort in crafting that change.
So more or less, you're looking not for a decision by any means from the town board tonight, but just direction whether or not we'd like you to pursue some
Correct.
changes with that.
And we've met briefly staff-wise. We did send this out to Tony and Michael in the Community Development Department. They do have some language and some cleanup items within the foundation, so there's certainly some adjustments that need to be made to it. But before we get into that and present something and provide some samples of what that would look like, we just want to make sure that you're comfortable with that. Maybe the board is really happy with the way the ordinance currently reads, and you want to leave it the same. If that's the case, we'll leave it the same.
I reflect back on some of probably the previous year, maybe just over a year, on some of the businesses that have come in to Greenville, Wolf River Machine, Thrivent Financial, the Cintas business as well as one that's under construction right now, All World Ford. They've all come to us expressing their concerns for the amount of landscaping that needs to be done there. It does seem a bit excessive at times, and instead of doing the number of one-offs, which seems to be almost every time, that we're trying to do some negotiations with the builders or the people wishing to do these constructions. I would like to see the staff go forward and review this. But if you do, I'm sure that it's already in the plans. I'd strongly encourage the staff to speak with people from the Planning Commission that have a strong opinion about this landscaping and make sure that their voice is heard and they have some ownership of what's going in so that there's not a lot of debate every time a business comes in. So I think you can figure out who some of those people that are passionate about landscaping within the Planning Commission are. So any other comments? It's just my general feeling.
I agree. I think it's time to do it.
Okay, so we've got full consensus from the board to go forward. And I just before it comes to the board, though, just ask that you speak with people from the Planning Commission. Maybe you want their recommendation on what comes forward to the board.
Actually, it's required.
I figured it was.
Yeah. So we go to the Planning Commission first with the public hearing. So it will go to the Planning Commission with the recommendation.
Would it be on the agenda for 2 weeks? Do you need that quick?
No, we have at least a 30-day public notice requirement. So
Well, we have a discussion with the planning commission.
we could have a discussion with them, get some feedback, but then
I
as
know
far as
how
the
close
official,
and all that, it changes things.
Yeah, I would strongly encourage. I think there's some other discussions that are going on with the Planning Commission anyhow on the comprehensive plan, so it could be meshed in with that. I think you're meeting with them individually, correct, Michael?
correct.
Yeah, just talk with them. There's some people that have a lot of passion around landscaping and make sure that Greenville has that look and appeal that we want it to. Okay. Joel, announcements?
Just a couple quick announcements. Wendy, Kelly, and I conducted interviews for our vacant deputy clerk administrative assistant position between Friday and today. We had over 25 applicants for the position. We interviewed 6 over the last 2 days. Now it comes down to making a decision, and we're gonna take the night to think about it. So we have good candidates. We're very pleased with the pool that we received, and I think we'll be very fortunate with a candidate that comes out of that pool. Next week, Monday, February 18th, we'll be meeting as an incorporation review committee to review the final document. That meeting will start at 5 p.m. And then immediately following that meeting, we'll be meeting with, as a special town board meeting at 6 p.m. to meet with the user groups of the sports complex or potential user groups of the sports complex to begin talking about how we want to go ahead and phase and design and construct that particular facility. February 25th is our next town board meeting. In addition to that, Planning Commission will be meeting that evening beginning at 4:30 p.m. To continue the process of updating our comprehensive plan, but more importantly, to begin talking about some real specific goals and objectives for that plan. So even if you don't serve on the Planning Commission, you're encouraged to attend at 4:30 to help facilitate that discussion. Tentatively right now, we're looking at a possible meeting on February 20th for the Facility Committee. We will have 95, maybe 99% design completed for the fire and safety building. So we'd like to just kind of walk through that with the commission or committee at that time as well. And then finally, I believe on the 26th, and Greg can quote me on that, the 26th is Park Commission here at Town Hall, correct? A couple other quick things. The suit against the town of Greenville for an excessive assessment for the Washer property, our decision was granted summary judgment. So that case has been now dismissed for that particular issue. And then our suit with Lamar has been dismissed as well. The judge has ruled in favor of the town, and that item is now crossed off of our docket as well.
Great. Anything else? Well, just by the announcements for the upcoming meetings, I think everybody knows that there's some tremendous things going on in Greenville. Not only the fire safety building, the sports complex, our incorporation process, those are huge, huge things for the community, and I just encourage all to participate whenever you can. That's all I have, and I'll make a motion to adjourn the town board meeting.
Second that.
Andy's given a second. All in favor to adjourn the town board meeting, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Meeting's adjourned at 6:48 p.m. We'll just take a couple of minutes here, and then we'll get into our sanitary district. I hope everybody stays.